Darren drove nights because that's when the city showed its true face. The streets thinned, people revealed themselves, and the air filled with the kind of silence that made every cough or laugh inside the car sound like confession. He liked the distance it gave him. 5 stars, polite nods, the illusion of connection that evaporated as soon as the doors closed. On a Thursday near midnight, he picked up a request from a neighborhood he didn't usually service, an older part of town where streetlights flickered and half the houses leaned under their own weight. The rider's name was simply listed as E. When he pulled up, no one was waiting at the curb. He double-checked the address. A sagging house squatted at the end of the street, windows black, the porch light dead. He tapped his phone to message the rider, but before he finished, the rear door clicked open. A figure slid in without a word. Darren caught the impression of pale skin, dark coat, and a smell that wasn't quite sweat and wasn't quite rot. Something sweet and sharp. "E?" Darren asked. "Yes," the passenger whispered. The voice was low, neither clearly male nor female, but stretched thin, as if spoken from too far away. The app marked the destination as an address across town Darren didn't recognize. He pulled into gear, trying to shrug off the nerves. Riders climbed in without words all the time. The road wound through neighborhoods where the houses leaned closer together, their dark windows reflecting passing headlights like eyes half open. After a few blocks, Darren glanced into the rearview mirror. The figure was a blur of black coat and pale face. The oddest part was the way it sat, too still, hands folded tightly in its lap, head tilted as if listening for something only it could hear. "You from around here?" Darren asked, just to break the silence. The passenger didn't answer. Instead, Darren heard the faintest hum, a low droning sound that rose and fell like a chant. His skin prickled. He turned the radio on to drown it out, but the passenger's voice slid under the music, always just at the edge of hearing. Halfway across the bridge, Darren's phone screen glitched. The map blinked, rerouted itself, then locked onto a single red line that didn't follow any road he knew. It stretched across the city, pointing to an area near the abandoned rail yard. He tried to refresh the app, but it froze. Time and distance both stuck. "Looks like it wants me to take another route," Darren muttered. He wasn't sure why he said it aloud, except that the silence was unbearable. "Yes," the passenger whispered, and Darren swore the voice came from directly behind his ear, though the figure still sat in the back seat. He gripped the wheel tighter and followed the red line. The streets emptied as they approached the industrial district. Warehouses loomed, graffiti scarring their walls, broken windows catching what little light there was. The app's navigation spun uselessly now, but Darren kept driving, led by instinct or maybe by the strange calm that had settled in his chest. Finally, the passenger spoke again. "Here." Darren slowed. They had stopped in front of a warehouse whose roof sagged like a dying animal. Its windows were boarded, but faint light glowed behind the cracks. "Do you want me to wait?" Darren asked, voice cracking. "Yes," the passenger whispered, sliding out of the car. The door shut gently, too gently for hands that should have been flesh. Darren sat gripping the wheel, staring at the building. The glow inside pulsed faintly, like breath. The air in the car grew heavier, as though someone still sat behind him. He glanced into the mirror and froze. The back seat was empty, but the faint imprint of a body pressed into the fabric remained, slowly deepening as if unseen weight still occupied the space. The warehouse door creaked open. For a moment, Darren saw figures inside, too many to count, all pale and swaying in rhythm, faces turned upward. The humming grew louder, bleeding through the cracked windows, the same drone the passenger had carried with them. His phone buzzed. A notification flashed. "Drop-off complete. Rider rated you 5 stars. Darren stared, heart hammering. The fare had been marked as paid. The name at the top of the screen had changed from E to everyone. The air in the car grew suffocating. The seat behind him sagged deeper, and Darren felt the faint brush of cold fingers along the back of his neck. He twisted around, but nothing was there. Only the empty seat and the deepening impression. Darker now, wet at the edges, as though something was seeping into the fabric. Panic finally broke him free. He slammed the car into drive and tore down the street, tires shrieking. He didn't stop until the warehouses gave way to the familiar glow of the city. His breath came in ragged gasps, his hands shaking on the wheel. He pulled over under a streetlight, forcing himself to look back. The seat was clean, unmarked, as though no one had ever sat there. He told himself to forget, to go home, to sleep, and write it off as exhaustion. But when he opened the app to end his shift, a new ride request was already waiting. Same pickup location, the sagging house with no lights. Same rider name. His thumb hovered over the screen. "Decline," he told himself. "Just decline." But the app pulsed, red lines stretching again across the map. And in the silence of the car, Darren heard the faint hum return, coming from the seat just behind him. Marcus drove the late shift because it paid better, and because the city after midnight had a different kind of honesty. People stumbled into his backseat drunk, crying, angry, sometimes silent, but always raw in ways daylight disguised. He liked the distance of it, strangers' lives brushing against his for 15 minutes, before dissolving back into the night. That was how it usually went, until the night he accepted a ride from an address on the edge of the old industrial district. The pickup location was a cul-de-sac lined with empty warehouses, their windows punched out, chain-link fences sagging. No one was waiting when he arrived, just shadows thrown by the sickly glow of one flickering streetlight. Marcus tapped the "I'm here" button and glanced around. A figure appeared suddenly from the alley, a man, tall, wearing a dark suit too clean for the neighborhood. He opened the rear door and slid in without hesitation. "You Marcus?" the man asked, voice calm but oddly flat. "Yeah, where to?" Marcus kept his tone even. The destination showed on the app, an address across town, near the river, but no details beyond that. Marcus pulled away from the curb. The man sat perfectly still in the back, hands folded, staring straight ahead. There was no smell of alcohol, no slur of speech, just silence. Traffic was thin. Marcus tried small talk. "Long night?" The man didn't answer at first. Then he said, almost as if reciting, "Everyone's night is long." The words settled uneasily in the air. Marcus focused on the road, but something was wrong with the GPS. The map blinked, recalculated, and showed a route that snaked through side streets Marcus didn't recognize, streets he was certain didn't exist. "Looks like it's taking me a weird way," Marcus muttered. Half to himself. "Just follow," the passenger said. Marcus's chest tightened. The man's reflection in the rear view was pale, distorted, as if the glass itself didn't quite want to hold his shape. He tried not to look again. They drove deeper into neighborhoods Marcus had never seen, though he'd been driving the city for years. The houses grew older, sagging under the weight of decades, windows boarded or gaping open. Streetlights thinned until the car's headlights seemed the only source of light in the world. The GPS kept urging him forward, each turn delivered in a calm voice that somehow felt like an echo of the man's own. After 20 minutes, Marcus realized he hadn't seen another car. Not one. The city was gone, replaced by streets that led only deeper into darkness. He slowed. "Hey, I think this is wrong. I should turn back." The man leaned forward slightly, his voice close to Marcus's ear. "You're almost there." Marcus's stomach dropped. His instinct screamed to stop the car and throw the man out, but his hands gripped the wheel like they were locked. The air inside the vehicle had grown colder, each breath fogging slightly, though the heater was on. Finally, the GPS announced they had arrived. The car rolled to a stop in front of a building Marcus didn't recognize, a crumbling hotel whose sign had long since lost its letters. Its windows glowed faintly, though no power lines ran to it. The man opened the door. Before stepping out, he looked directly into Marcus's eyes through the mirror. His gaze was black, depthless. "Wait for me," he said. The door shut and he walked into the building. Marcus sat frozen. His instincts screamed to drive away, but the app still glowed on his phone. The trip hadn't ended. The screen displayed a message he'd never seen before. "Ride in progress. Do not abandon passenger." The warning pulsed red. Minutes stretched. The building loomed, its windows flickering with shadows that moved too erratically to be candlelight. Shapes seemed to pass by, tall and thin, glancing toward the car. Marcus gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. The rear door opened again. The man slid back inside. But something was different. His suit was torn, his hands smeared with something dark. His eyes glinted faintly. "Take me home," he said. Marcus nodded, heart hammering, and put the car in gear. The GPS reset, showing a straight line back to the cul-de-sac where the ride began. The streets on the way back seemed narrower, more twisted, lined with faces half hidden in doorways. He avoided looking directly at them, but the car's mirrors betrayed him, reflections of figures pressed too close, their mouths opening and closing soundlessly. At last, they reached the cul-de-sac. Marcus stopped, relief washing through him. "We're here," he said, voice trembling. The man leaned forward again, so close Marcus could feel the cold air radiating from him. "You drove well," he whispered. Then he opened the door and stepped into the shadows. Marcus's phone buzzed. The ride ended automatically. 5 stars, a generous tip already applied. The app thanked him for his service. Shaking, Marcus looked into the back seat. It was empty, but the upholstery was damp, streaked with something that smelled faintly metallic. He drove home in silence, headlights carving through streets that finally looked familiar again. He told himself he wouldn't drive nights anymore. But the next evening, when he opened the app out of habit, a ride request popped up instantly. Same pickup location, same rider name, E. His finger hovered over decline, but the button wouldn't respond. The screen pulsed red, waiting. In the silence of the car, Marcus thought he heard a voice from the back seat, calm and patient. Everyone's night is long. Kevin had been driving for 3 years, and he thought he'd seen every type of passenger. Drunks trying to eat burgers in the back seat, couples fighting and making up in the span of 10 blocks, businessmen who barked calls as if the driver were invisible. The app kept him busy, the money was steady enough, and the anonymity suited him. But one autumn night, he picked up a request from a stretch of highway on the outskirts of town, a spot he knew well because there was nothing there. Just a service road, no houses, no businesses. He almost cancelled, but the payout surge was high. He pulled onto the shoulder where the pin blinked on his screen. Headlights washed over empty asphalt. Then a figure stepped out of the trees. A woman in a grey coat, her hair matted with damp leaves. She opened the back door and slid in without speaking. Kevin cleared his throat. "Evening. You headed downtown?" She nodded. Her reflection in the rear view was strange, blurry like condensation on glass. He rubbed the mirror with his sleeve, but the distortion remained. Shrugging uneasily, he pulled back onto the road. At first, the ride was silent, except for the hum of tires. Then he noticed she wasn't looking out the window or at her phone. Her gaze was fixed on him, unblinking, like she was studying the back of his head. When he tried small talk, "Cold night, huh?" She responded with a faint smile, nothing more. After 10 minutes, the GPS rerouted him down roads Kevin didn't recognize. He knew the city well, but these streets were wrong, narrower, lined with houses that looked abandoned, their windows black, doors sagging. Yet every turn was confirmed by the calm voice of navigation, urging him onward. "You sure this is right?" he asked. The woman leaned forward slightly, her breath cool on his ear. "Yes, keep going." He gripped the wheel tighter, a chill working down his spine. Her voice was too calm, like she'd been waiting for this exact route. The neighborhoods grew stranger, quieter. No other cars passed. Even the streetlights seemed fewer, their glow casting long shadows that bent in unnatural directions. Kevin's chest tightened. He decided to end the ride, pull over, and tell her she'd have to get out. But when he tapped the screen, the app froze. The end ride button pulsed uselessly. His phone buzzed once. A new text appeared where the fare should have been. "Do not stop." His throat went dry. "Ma'am, I think there's a glitch. I'm taking you back to..." "Do not stop," she repeated, this time with a weight in her voice that filled the car like a second engine. Kevin swallowed hard, sweat dampening his palms. He pressed the accelerator just to keep from arguing. The houses thinned, giving way to stretches of field broken by skeletal trees. The road narrowed until it was little more than a cracked lane. Ahead, a building loomed, an old motel with half its letters burned out, leaving only "Tell" flickering red. The GPS announced cheerfully, "You have arrived." The woman finally moved. She opened the door and stepped out. Kevin leaned across the seat to protest, to tell her he wasn't safe staying here, but she didn't enter the motel. She walked past it, into the darkness beyond. His phone dinged. The ride ended automatically. He glanced at the screen, 5 stars, a large tip. The passenger name had changed from Sarah to unknown. Kevin sat shaking. He told himself to leave, to put the car in gear and tear away. But the rear door clicked shut behind him, as if someone had climbed back inside. He whipped around. The seat was empty. Yet in the mirror, for a split second, he saw her sitting there, hair dripping, eyes fixed on him, smiling. Then she was gone. He drove home in silence, refusing to look back again. The app remained frozen until he pulled into his driveway. When he restarted it, everything looked normal. He convinced himself exhaustion had made him imagine the whole thing. The next night, he swore he wouldn't drive. He watched TV, tried to relax. But around midnight, his phone buzzed with a new ride request. The pickup location made his stomach twist. Same stretch of highway, same empty shoulder. The surge price was higher this time. His finger hovered over decline, but the button wouldn't respond. In the silence of his living room, he heard the faint sound of a rear door clicking open, and the soft whisper of a woman's voice close to his ear. "Don't stop." Kevin dropped the phone, but the screen kept glowing. Red lines stretching across a map he no longer recognized, waiting for him to follow. Lena drove Uber part-time to cover her rent, usually sticking to the safer neighborhoods. But one rainy Saturday night, the app pinged her with a pickup on the far edge of town. It was a factory district she usually avoided. Empty lots, shuttered plants, a few flickering street lamps. The name on the request was just Daniel. The payout was high enough that she ignored her hesitation and drove out. The man was waiting under a broken light. He wore a hooded sweatshirt and carried nothing, not even a phone in his hand. though the ride was clearly booked. He slid into the back seat and said only, "Thank you for coming." His voice was polite but flat, drained of all inflection. "No problem," Lena replied, forcing cheer. "You heading downtown?" "Yes." He leaned back, face hidden in the hood's shadow. The GPS mapped a route across town, into neighborhoods Lena didn't know well. She drove, trying to ignore the steady rhythm of rain on the windshield. In the rear view, Daniel sat perfectly still, too still. Most riders fidgeted, checked their phones, stared out the window. He just stared forward, as if waiting for something. 10 minutes in, the app rerouted suddenly. The blue lines swerved off the main roads, pulling them toward an area Lena swore had been abandoned for years. Rows of old houses stood half-collapsed, their windows blank like sockets. She tapped the screen trying to correct it, but the app froze. The words, "Follow route," pulsed across the map. "Hey, looks like the GPS is acting up," she said, glancing in the mirror. "Just follow," Daniel said. His tone hadn't changed, but something in it left no space for argument. The road narrowed, hemmed in by trees. The rain thickened, streaking the glass, and the wipers struggled to keep up. Lena's nerves prickled. The dashboard clock said 12:47, but the minutes refused to move forward. For a while it stayed frozen, until the numbers jumped straight to 3:03. She pulled into a cul-de-sac surrounded by ruined houses. The app chimed, "You have arrived." Daniel opened the door, stepped out, and walked up to the nearest house without looking back. Lena gripped the wheel, debating whether to wait. Before she decided, her phone buzzed. A new message appeared on the screen, though not from the app. "Stay where you are." Her skin crawled. She turned to check the back seat. Empty, but the seatbelt hung twisted, wet, as if someone still sat there dripping. The house Daniel entered glowed faintly in the windows, though no power should have run to this street. Shadows shifted inside, tall and jerky, crossing the light like figures moving against cloth. A low hum drifted through the rain, building to a rhythm. It sounded almost like chanting. The rear door opened again. Lena's breath hitched, but no one climbed in. The air grew colder, fogging the glass from the inside. Then Daniel's voice came from just behind her head, though the seat was still empty. "Drive." Her hands obeyed before her mind caught up. She pulled away, the houses shrinking in the rear view. The chanting followed, muffled but insistent, until distance swallowed it. The app showed the ride still in progress. The destination had changed again, this time marked only with a red dot on the map. The line stretched across town, ending at a cemetery near the river. Her chest tightened, every instinct screaming to bail, but the doors wouldn't unlock. She tested the handle and found it sealed, the locks glowing faintly red, as if the car itself refused to let her out. By the time she reached the cemetery gates, her phone buzzed once more. Drop-off complete. The locks clicked open. The back seat was empty, though a patch of water stained the fabric, shaped like the imprint of a body. Lena drove home, shaking. She told herself it was exhaustion, nerves, an app glitch, nothing more. But the next evening, when she opened the app, a ride request appeared instantly. "Pickup, the same cul-de-sac, rider Daniel." The decline button wouldn't respond, no matter how many times she pressed. And from the corner of her eye, in the mirror, she thought she saw him already sitting in the back seat, hood pulled low, waiting patiently for her to drive. At last, they reached the cul-de-sac. Marcus stopped, relief washing through him. "We're here," he said, voice trembling. The man leaned forward again, so close Marcus could feel the cold air radiating from him. "You drove well," he whispered. Then he opened the door and stepped into the shadows. Marcus's phone buzzed. The ride ended automatically, 5 stars, a generous tip already applied. The app thanked him for his service. Shaking, Marcus looked into the back seat. It was empty, but the upholstery was damp, streaked with something that smelled faintly metallic. He drove home in silence, headlights carving through streets that finally looked familiar again. He told himself he wouldn't drive nights anymore, but the next evening, when he opened the app out of habit, a ride request popped up instantly. Same pickup location, same rider name, E. His finger hovered over decline, but the button wouldn't respond. The screen pulsed red, waiting. In the silence of the car, Marcus thought he heard a voice from the back seat, calm and patient. Everyone's night is long. Kevin had been driving for 3 years, and he thought he'd seen every type of passenger. Drunks trying to eat burgers in the back seat, couples fighting and making up in the span of 10 blocks, businessmen who barked calls as if the driver were invisible. The app kept him busy, the money was steady enough, and the anonymity suited him. But one autumn night, he picked up a request from a stretch of highway on the outskirts of town, a spot he knew well because there was nothing there. Just a service road, no houses, no businesses. He almost cancelled, but the payout surge was high. He pulled onto the shoulder where the pin blinked on his screen. Headlights washed over empty asphalt. Then a figure stepped out of the trees. A woman in a grey coat, her hair matted with damp leaves. She opened the back door and slid in without speaking. Kevin cleared his throat. "Evening. You headed downtown?" She nodded.